His Excellency the President of the Republic of Ghana, Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo, the Chairman of Conference and President of the Ghana Bar Association, Sir Anthony Forson Jr., my Lord Chief Justice, Justice Yeboah, and Justice of the Supreme Court of Ghana, here present, our host, the Reverend Ishud Anaba, Honorable Ministers of State, the Honorable Upper East Regional Minister, Mr. Stephen Yakubu, the President of the ECOWAS Court, Justice Edward Amwako Asante, Deputy Attorney General, Mr. Alfred Yeboah, Deputy Attorney General, Ms. Diana Sunaba Dapa, of course, former Attorney General, Honorable Joe Gatti, members of the Council of State, the President of the Upper East Regional House of Chiefs, the China Paga, the President of the Upper East Regional Bar, Mr. Amwak Afoku, members of the Bar Council, distinguished members of the Bar, ladies and gentlemen, friends of the media. I am pleased to be called upon to deliver this address. Indeed, on 21st January 2021, about 5:20 p.m. to be precise, I received a call which turned out to be the most important in my professional and political career so far. It was a call from His Excellency the President. The President entreated me to drop whatever I was doing and proceed immediately to the Jubilee House. In response to the command, I entered my car and immediately I heard the radio station announcing the names of members of the President's government for a second term. Right thereafter, I received numerous phone calls from various radio personalities. I refused to speak to them because Mr. President had not made any disclosure to me. I entered Mr. President's office and straight away he informed me that I had, in all humility, duly and faithfully discharged my role as Deputy Attorney General. Mr. President, I remember the exact words. Around the country, across the party, everybody is of the opinion that you ought to be the next Attorney General. Fast forward, on 5th March 2021, by the grace of God, I was sworn in as the Attorney General, and necessarily, I'm the official leader of the bar. I thank you very much, and I'm very honored to present this address, which happens to be my very first one. Mr. Chairman, the annual conference of the Ghana Bar Association is a highlight of the bar's activities every year. The event reminds us of who we are and the purposes we serve as lawyers. The indispensability of the lawyer in the affairs of state is brought to the fore. The lawyer's work is crucial to the building of a sound, peaceful Ghana. And indeed, I posit that the vigilance of lawyers that has ensured the protection of human rights and the welfare of society is also required to guarantee the economic development of the country. It is for this reason that I find most apt the theme for this year's conference, ensuring an increase in revenue mobilization through taxation for the purpose of accelerated national development, the role of the lawyer. The theme calls attention to the role of the lawyer in fostering the economic growth of Ghana. It's a sign that the business of law and government are acting in congruity. Further, it is for me an affirmation of the bar's resolve to confront the practical problems of the day with the utmost candor we can command and depth of understanding, informed, of course, by the history of discipline of our profession, remaining vigilant for the welfare of society and protection of human rights. Unfriendly as the subject of taxation may be, it is certainly central to national development. The payment of tax is the most basic obligation of the citizen. So it is written in the good book, the Holy Bible, that Jesus did not oppose the payment of taxes. In fact, Jesus paid taxes and entreated us in Matthew chapter 22, verse 21, and I quote, "Render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and unto God the things that are God's," end of quote. Mr. Chairman, in my view, tax constitutes one of the three pillars of revenue mobilization fundamental for satisfying the ever-growing need of the nation for infrastructure and other social and economic amenities. The other two pillars of the tripod are industrialization and the building of institutions to minimize revenue loss. The oft-touted rapid economic growth of Ghana should indeed increase the taxable capacity of the country and enable a much more significant share of the private sector's resources to be ceded to the government in the form of taxes, so as to provide public goods and services. The ambitious long-term legacy projects undertaken by the government of President Akufo-Addo, like the free secondary education, one district, one factory program, the massive construction of roads, one village, one dam, the construction of 11 district hospitals, are only a few of the constructive purposes our taxes are being put to, for which the business community and the citizenry ought to repay the faith by paying the requisite amount of taxes prescribed by law. The professional and ethical training of lawyers places us in the position to play a fundamental role in the proper functioning of the Ghanaian tax system. The lawyer performs functions in the nature of structuring, negotiating, and documenting business entities, and advising clients on the tax implications of companies to be incorporated, joint venture estates, gifts, international transactions, as well as possible exemptions from tax. A lawyer, therefore, ought to have sufficient knowledge of tax laws and statutory regulations, as well as keep abreast of the amendments to the various tax laws so as to effectively advise clients. Mr. Chairman, a major flaw with our tax system is a phenomenon described in popular parlance as tax evasion. It is that situation of citizens and persons working in Ghana dodging their tax obligations, either by completely avoiding coming within the tax bracket when they ought to be, or deploying illegal means to minimize their tax liability through fraudulent techniques. This practice, to say the least, it is loyal to the state. Sad to say, many lawyers are caught in the phenomenon of tax evasion as they unjustifiably avoid being caught in the tax net, either by understating their profits or concealing their true income. The luxurious lifestyles of certain lawyers, riding in the most splash of vehicles and acquiring top-end properties, are hardly commensurate with the amount of taxes they pay. I entreat lawyers to honor their fullest of their tax obligations, as not to do is not only criminal, but also borders on a gross violation of professional rules. The legal professional code of professional conduct and etiquette rules requires lawyers to demonstrate the highest level of ethical behavior and integrity at all times. In practice, this implies that lawyers are required to be ethical watchdogs in the corporate world. We will have to pay our taxes in addition to walking away from clients who insist on engaging in the criminal act of tax evasion, contrary to good counsel. I would suggest that the bar should, as part of the criteria for publication of lawyers in good standing every year, require evidence of fulfillment of tax obligations. I must admit that the failure of I must admit that the failure of lawyers in Ghana to discharge their full tax obligations is not entirely their fault. The absence of effective systems by the Ghana Revenue Authority to ensure that all taxpayers are brought into the tax net is majorly responsible. The GRA ought to devise the appropriate mechanisms for ensuring that the tax net is broadened to its elastic limit in order to bring within it all potential taxpayers, including all practicing lawyers. The Chairman, I owe it a duty to place on record that taxation cannot be the sole means of revenue generation for the state. Industrialization constitutes a very important source of revenue, and I dare say the most important for President Akufo-Addo's government. Being fully aware of the self-evident truth that Ghana cannot achieve a sound development without a well-thought-out industrialization agenda, President Akufo-Addo conceives of the One District, One Factory program as key to the realization of his vision for the economic transformation of Ghana, which is encapsulated in the policy, Ghana Beyond Aid. This policy aims at achieving a prosperous and self-confident Ghana that is in charge of her economic destiny, prosperous enough to be engaging competitively with the rest of the world through trade and investment, and ultimately not requiring aid for survival. Indeed, one will wonder why the Attorney General is talking about matters of taxation. My ministry does not superintend revenue generation in this country, nor does it deal with fiscal policy matters. However, because of the nature of the rule of law, the Office of the Attorney General and Ministry of Justice, as a protector of the public interest, has a pervasive and particular role in all of these activities. That is, ensuring compliance with the tax laws of Ghana, boosting the industrialization agenda of Ghana, and the raising of sufficient revenue to address the gaps in the country's budget. Ronald Dorquin said in the penultimate chapter of his work entitled Justice for Hedgehogs that, and I quote, "Law is a branch of morality," end of quote. He was right. And although it may not seem like it, I also say that politics is another branch of morality. One way in which the common purpose of politics and law is achieved is exemplified by the office I hold. It is what puts the Attorney General at the heart of the Constitution. Sir Elwyn Jones, Attorney General of England from 1964 to 1970, stated, and I quote, "The Attorney General is a protector of the public interest generally. This aspect of his duties had a very early origin. He has for long been the proper person to take legal proceedings where the interests of the public are endangered or acts tending to cause public injury are done without authority," end of quote. Mr. Chairman, while discussing revenue mobilization, it will be a grave omission not to touch on an issue which has proven its capacity to deter the prosperity of nations around the world, erode public interest in government, and also undermine commerce. Corruption is that issue. If not nipped in the bud, all the fine aspirations of maximizing revenue and making Ghana a haven for business will be futile. The government of President Akufo-Addo is fully aware that corruption thrives in an atmosphere conducive to its concealment and the absence of systems to ensure that consequences of perpetration of corruption are applied in a fair and efficient manner. In order to deal with this, the government between 2017 and 2018 ensured the passage of the Right to Information Act, the Protection of Witnesses Act, the Office of the Special Prosecutor Act, the Corporate Restructuring and Insolvency Act, as well as the Companies Act 2019 at 992. Indeed, the establishment of the Office of Special Prosecutor, in my view, represents the single most courageous and significant measure on the part of any government since independence, to the extent that it engendered institutional reform by creating an organ capable of prosecuting corruption and corruption-related offenses in a manner devoid of the perception of possible executive interference. It is my belief that with the right attitude, mindset, and understanding of the demands of the office, the new Special Prosecutor, Mr. Kisei Jabin, will rise to the duties imposed on him by the law establishing his office. Mr. Chairman, indeed, I'm continuing with the process of strengthening the systems in place for preventing corruption by ensuring that a set of far-reaching and perhaps a more fit-for-purpose set of regulations for the conduct of public officers in this country is laid down through the enactment of a Code of Conduct of Public Officers. The proposed Conduct of Public Officers Bill, which has already gone through discussions by various stakeholders at a forum organized over a month ago, will follow the example of legislations in other jurisdictions like the United States of America, Kenya, and the United Kingdom in addressing issues regarding financial portfolios held by public officers before assuming public office, links to family businesses, professional practices, property investment, shareholdings and other assets, self-dealing, partiality in the performance of duties, the use of public or confidential information to further private interests, improper arrangement, and care of public property. The bill also seeks to address matters relating to sexual harassment and provides a gamut of stringent administrative measures and sanctions to deal with violations of the law, ranging from a bar against holding public office to other penal measures. Mr. Chairman, the state's hard-pressed purse is grossly affected by the award of judgment debt in various unconscionable transactions, whereby the state is ordered to pay huge compound interest on debt accruing from transactions entered into on her behalf by public officers whose primary duty is to protect the public interest. The recent example of a financial house claiming payment of over 1.3 billion Ghana cedis from a transaction involving a meager 268,000 Ghana cedis, even after the state had already paid 79 million Ghana cedis, simply because the agreed rate of interest was compound interest, comes to mind. It took the intervention of the Supreme Court in the exercise of its inherent jurisdiction pursuant to an application by the Attorney General to declare further payments as unlawful. In order to address these inimical tendencies, I propose to be passed by Parliament as a matter of urgency an amendment to the Contract Act 1960 at 25 to disallow the payment of compound interest by the state in transactions entered into on her behalf by public officers. This urgent amendment to the Contract Act will explicitly forbid a public officer from entering into a contract on behalf of the state and stating the rate of interest to be compound interest. This will prohibit the occurrence of the situation which called for the Supreme Court's intervention and will also save the state enormous income which can be utilized for development. On this, I must say I have the fullest support of His Excellency the President and the Minister for Finance. I also expect the cooperation of the Bar as well. The Chairman, the invitation given to me to address this conference extended to me the liberty to address the conference on any topic of my choice. A blank check was thus given to me. In this regard, it will be a sore omission for me not to talk about certain unhealthy practices on the part of lawyers which militate against the justice system in Ghana. I observe a systematic and conscious effort by some lawyers to denigrate the judiciary and undermine public confidence in the sound administration of justice through a deliberate misrepresentation of the effect of court rulings, as well as false and vitriolic commentary on electronic and mass media, purely inspired by a vile motive to run down the judiciary. Even when applications duly filed in accordance with law and procedure are pending before the highest court of the land, some legal practitioners do not spare an effort to prejudice the minds of the public with mischievous analysis on public radio, television, and social media, all calculated to force the hands of the judges to deliver the verdict in a particular manner, or to whip up sentiment of the public against a particular court hearing the matter, in the event of an outcome unfavorable to them. These practices are vicious and misguided, and indeed it holds true that the arena for the lawyer to test the strength of his reasoning or the validity of his argument is in the courtroom, not on the airwaves or modern-day social media. I need not remind this gathering that the responsibility for a fair and effective administration of the laws of the Republic of Ghana are a product of the conscious and the collective efforts of all. The nature of our laws, enacted by Parliament, the procedure and judgment of our courts, the work of law enforcement officials, the wisdom, skill, and zeal of the bar are all critical. Throughout the history of Ghana, the judiciary has served us well in its capacity to develop fundamental principles and give life to the aspirations of the citizen. It is no time to destroy same beyond redemption, or to, if I may borrow the words of Lord Tosin at this stage, and he says, to give it a funeral oration. I recall that recently, the state was castigated widely in the press for incurring a judgment debt in excess of $50 million as a result of the activities of the erstwhile Interministerial Committee on Illegal Mining about 2 years ago. In July this year, I successfully led the prosecution of an application to set aside the said judgment. Some lawyers who are active players in social media, perhaps feeling disappointed that the weapon deployed by them in their attack on the state's measures to resuscitate the war against illegal mining in Galamsey had been destroyed, mounted unwarranted attacks on me and the judge who delivered the ruling, with some suggesting rather preposterously and absurdly that the judge in question should be removed from office. Indeed, it's very ridiculous and preposterous to say the least. It is as if they revel in judgment or rulings against the state, and when judgments are successfully challenged, it is disappointment galore for them. May I take the opportunity to convey to the bar, of which I am its humble official leader, that insofar as the Attorney General the state will zealously protect its interests in litigation, just as private legal practitioners protect the interests of their clients. A victory for the state to the chagrin of a private citizen is no justification for unwarranted attacks on public officers responsible for the state's victory. It's imperative to state that the necessary efforts are being made to ensure that the industry of state attorneys is properly complemented with the supply of resources required to assist them in the discharge of their constitutional functions. I must report that in response to a special appeal I made to Cabinet in June this year, the Minister for Finance has released the entire sum stated as required for a satisfaction of urgent needs of the Office of Attorney General. And out of this, 89 vehicles, as well as office equipment necessary for our work, will be procured for the Office of Attorney General and Ministry of Justice. I'm happy to say that per the timelines for the procurement activity, the entire 89 vehicles will be delivered within 10 to 12 weeks from today. All regional offices and relevant agencies under the ministry will have their fair share of the supply. Work on a 12-story building to accommodate the Office of the Attorney General is also steadily progressing and is on course to be completed within about 18 months. We are grateful to you, Mr. President. A well-oiled Attorney General's Department is the biggest signpost for improved conditions in the practice of law. Mr. Chairman, I cannot conclude this address without once again denouncing the tendency of some lawyers, some being senior lawyers, who have occupied high offices of state and have even been leaders of the bar, to deploy the traditional and social media to assail the integrity and reputation of senior figures in this country. Such conduct, undoubtedly dishonorable, also occasions a breach of rules of professional conduct and etiquette at the bar. I would advise lawyers, when using social media, to be mindful of the age-old requirements of the profession insofar as ethics is concerned. Technology did not eradicate ethics, neither did it render the need for ethical compliance any less important or necessary. The spread of false information by lawyers and disregard for the cherished values of the legal profession, apart from being disreputable, poses a far greater threat to cohesion in society, especially when it comes from senior lawyers. The misguided crave for cheap publicity and undue disparagement of others must be avoided. The nation ought to be concerned because ultimately, a dishonest bar breeds a corrupt bench and affects the corrupt society we seek to build. Mr. Chairman, I have no doubt that this conference will serve its purpose of not only being a refreshing opportunity to network among lawyers before they start a new legal year, but will also refocus all of us on the core values of the legal profession, as well as foster a closer collaboration between the bar and government. I'm aware that this year is an election year. May I take this opportunity to wish the various candidates the very best. May the conduct of the elections be smooth, and may the best candidate win. I also would like to wish you all the best in your future endeavors as you take steps to exit your very much cherished role. Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity.